Okay, so today we're going to continue on with the Once Upon a Time We Made a Story series. And if you're new to this, what we're talking about is how we've taken the Bible and some of these things in the Bible and turned them into kind of like a fairy tale version uh, of what actually happened, or we neglect the details that are in the story. And we turn them and we add things to them and make them into our own. And we are focusing currently on the Genesis story, the creation story, the fall of man. And so today we're going to be talking about in the beginning there was darkness. Now, what we're going to be doing today is kind of brain hacking the devil, trying to figure out why he hates mankind and why he hates Christians. If you're unaware of the term brain hacking, that's actually a technology term that's used for getting inside and manipulating somebody's mind to have them do different actions or to figure out the reasoning behind why a person thinks and acts the way that they do. This is actually something that's used quite common on apps and mobile devices, brain hacking. Look it up. It will scare you. All right, going on. Our primary text is going to be Genesis 1:1 through 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Now let's take a moment to look just at this verse. Now, while there is the physical darkness upon the earth, we have to consider a few things. Firstly, there was something there. It was raging. It was chaotic. It was, evil. Raging is not something that you put with like a cute bunny rabbit or you put with something that's calm and defiant. Raging is something that you put in something that's like a sea, torrential, something that is angry, something that has a force that is adverse. That's the first thing. Second thing is that there was water. There was something there. God was hovering over the waters. The water was there. It was moving, but it was in a constant state of flux. There was no definitive form. If you look in a science book, this actually makes sense with science for all y'all out there who want to smack it down around a little bit and say that now you're teaching this and that. No, I'm not. It's in the Bible. But water does not have a form. Water is in a liquid state, meaning it adapts to whatever form its container holds. Elementary science right there. Now, from the non-physical, we see that the world was in darkness as in a state of evil. That comes from the raging. That comes from the chaoticness of the earth. Now, why is the earth in a state of chaos? Well, because the devil was here. Now, before we go on, let me state, I am not teaching the dual creation theory. Not doing it. Don't believe in it. I'm not teaching the gap theory. I don't believe in that. I believe in creation. I believe it as in the Bible. I am not reading into the Bible things that aren't there. That being said, it is biblical that the devil was already on the earth prior to God creating the earth as we know it today. Why is this? Consider, God is of order. He is not of chaos. Therefore, if the earth is in a state of chaos and God created the heavens and the earth, something had to create that chaos. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 14:33, God is not a God of disorder, but of peace, as in the congregation of the people. Isaiah 11 talks about the different characteristics of God. You can look at those videos below to get a in-depth discussion on the various attributes and personality traits of God. So, if God did not create chaos but in randomness and confusion, then the adversary of God must have. There had to be something that did that. And as the Bible tells us that the devil is the father of lies, confusion, disorder, murder, etc., it makes sense that the devil did this. Now, the devil of the darkness. Now, I know I'm using some cliche images here because the Bible says that the devil presents himself as an angel of light, but I wanted to drive the point home that we're talking about the devil. Not glorifying, but talking. So point one, the kingdom given. Now remember, we're trying to brain hack here. We're trying to figure out why he hates Christians, why he hates man. Now there's this misconception, but it's a good misconception. It's a deductive that the devil was the minister of music in heaven. And then there's also the misconception, and this one is the one that's bad, is that the devil was not on the earth until after Eden was created, and that he kind of just showed up and did his thing. But we can kind of debunk this a little bit if we look at Ezekiel 28:13 and 14. It says, "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Fervently precious stone was your covering, sardis, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, permalloy, and carbuncle, and crafted in gold were your settings and your engravings. On the day that you were created, you were prepared. You were an anointed guardian of cherub. And I placed you on a holy mountain of God in the midst of the stones of the fire you walked." Now, this kind of goes into the being an angel of a minister of music, because as we can see in Revelation 5 and 8 and 15 and 2, the cherub are before God's throne singing day and night. So if he was in charge of the cherubim, then logically he was in charge of the singing. Now, as to the fact that he was already on the face of the earth, we can see this from various scriptures. And the first one we're going to go to is Isaiah 42:8, when it talks about Satan being cast out of heaven. We can kind of start there and then kind of work forward. God's not going to share his glory with another, but yet Satan wanted to be above God, as we can see in Isaiah 14:12 through 15, where it talks about how he has fallen from heaven, the morning star. He wanted to climb above the heavens. Now, when we go to Revelation 12:7 through 9, we can see about the war in heaven where Satan was thrown down. Okay, so we see these scriptures. We know that Satan fell. We know that he had a place in heaven. We know that he wanted to become God. We know that he wanted his own kingdom. Now, what we tend to overlook is that God gave him exactly what he wanted to an effect. The devil wanted to be a god of his kingdom. God gave him the earth that was void and dark. Now, yes, it was a punishment, but at the same time, it was giving the devil what he wanted for a time being. Now, this is going to go into point 2, which talks about the concept of power. This is where we really start to see why Satan hates Christians and why he hates mankind. Now, the winner effect is where we're going to start. And the winner effect is a theory suggested by psychologist David McLeland. And what it states is that those in power always will crave power. It's the ladder, the climbing the ladder effect, basically. And what it entails is, if you have somebody that is given power or given responsibility, then that person, regardless of how minute that power might be, will always seek to have more power and will always seek to do things to keep that power. Now, another quote from that is, "Power fosters the delusion of indispensability, and many political leaders have created havoc by fighting to stay in a post because they genuinely believe that their abilities are crucial for the survival of country and that no one else can better do it." Now, if we put this in terms of the devil, we can see that, he's a power-hungry being. He's not a person, and he's not a god, he's a being. He's a power-hungry being that wants to have that power. He believes he deserves the power over the earth, that nobody else can do the job of ruling the earth but him. And then we also have that winner effect that comes in to where he always wants more power, he wants to gain more power, he wants to be higher than God. So when you think of this, then you can definitely see how he will do chaotic, delusional, dangerous things to mankind, to the planet, to God, to anyone who gets in his way, so that he can obtain these paranoid delusions of grandeur. Now, the second part of this, why the devil hates mankind and why the devil hates Christians, is the shift to power. And if we go back to the Genesis story, we see that one, the devil was kicked out of heaven with those angels, so there was a loss of power there. Somebody else is in charge up there. I'm sure God didn't just stop the music because the devil left. The second thing is that he was given dominion over this void, this water and raging that was going on. He was cast down to the earth. Now, depending on how you believe it, he could have been cast down to the earth. It was void. God immediately created the earth and put him in there. Or you could believe in the devil was on the darkness and the raging, and that God created everything, made it perfect, and kind of stuck him in the middle of the garden near the tree that was not supposed to be touched. Again, that goes kind of back to the definition of what Eden is. Eden means the perfect place. It's not talking about the garden. And as God created the 7 days, he said everything was good and perfect. I tend to lean in this manner, but it's one of those you won't know till you get to heaven things. But regardless, the devil was given dominion over the earth for a period of time. And even the Bible states that he is the current king of the earth, even though mankind can have dominion over the devil and the animals and stuff like that. This is basically still the devil's playground. So what happened is the shift of power. The devil had all control, all the power, all the cards in his hand. And when man was created, God gave that dominion to man, stripping the devil of that power. Even though it was delusional power, it stripped him of that power, and he gave it to another being. Now, when we try to do the brain hack thing, it makes perfect sense, because we can see if we attribute the characteristics of man to the devil, which I'm not saying he has the same mindset as mankind, but if it's anything like mankind, we can see how that hatred developed. Firstly, you have man, which is a created being like the devil was created, but we are created in the image of God. The devil was not. So what you have is this created being that's taking all the power from somebody. Now, in the real world situation here, if we were to say, okay, you're CEO of a company, and in comes the janitor, and you're not doing your job well, but granted, it is your job. And then the big boss comes in and takes all of your power, strips it down, and gives it to the janitor and makes you the janitor instead. You're not going to be happy about that. And that's basically what happened with the earth, is that man was given the power and the dominion, and everything was taken from the devil. Not sympathizing with the devil at all. I'm just trying to give you a mindset here. Secondly, after the fall, there is the perception that the devil was treated unfairly by the devil. He thinks he's treated unfairly because man disobeyed God, Satan disobeyed God, Satan is condemned eternally. We were giving grace. Now we're going to go in this in just a second here, because it does make sense here. But first, again, let's focus on the shift of power. The difference between our punishment and Satan's punishment in the shift of power and everything like that is that Satan was in heaven and saw everything God had to offer, knew God intimately in heaven, experienced everything, and then chose to disabandon everything. He chose to give it all up. He chose to go his own route, and he chose to be God. Now, Eve was deceived by Satan. Adam was not. Redemption, but the redemption is still there because there was a deception of Eve. Yes, they had the free will choice, but they didn't have the full scope. Even Adam, that was not deceived, didn't have the full scope of God's character, heaven, and everything that it entailed. They were given a part. That's that whole, we see the darkly, but we will be known as we are known as in Corinthians when I was a babe. That's where that all goes into play. Now, while Satan can't regain his dominion over the earth, he does wish to have the power and authority. So this is why he manipulates people to his will, why he does the same thing that people do in the earth. Everyday people manipulate other people to get their will, to get their way, to do things, and to make them more powerful. One of the things I'm constantly telling my children is that when people manipulate and when people put the focus on how bad another person is and how they can be mean to that person or how they can shift the power and make them do what they want, it's because the person that is doing those deeds has low self-esteem, has power issues. They want power by making somebody else feel weaker, and that is the case with the devil. As it pertains to people, we can see in 1 John 3:10, it says, "This is how we know the children of God and the children of the devil. Those who do right are of God. Those who do not are not of God, especially those who do not love their brother or sister." That's paraphrasing the exact verses on the screen, or you can look it up in your Bible. Now, point 3, why the devil attacks mankind and Christian is the simple fact of rats on a sinking ship. Many times we get this misconception that the devil is personally out against us individually. Now, let me clarify. There are principalities, there are evils in the world, there are spirits in the world, and they do have a place against Christians and mankind. They do attack. But for us to say that the devil himself, the personal devil, the singular devil, is attacking us is probably not true. The devil is not a god. He can't be everywhere at one time. He doesn't know the past, present, and future. He cannot do that. He can't manipulate things to his will. He can't create and destroy and all that. That's God. The devil is just an entity made by the creator, God, who fell. He does have a legion of followers. He does have a legion of principalities and spirits in high places. That being said, when you think about the devil as personally attacking you in a one-on-one, usually it's not true because the devil is going to personally attack only those who have the greatest probability for catastrophic losses in the kingdom of heaven. Now, will you fight the pawns of Satan day to day? Yes, and that those can be overcome easier than the devil. Look at the video of how to overcome the devil if you do that. There's one below. So, when thinking about back to Genesis and the motivations of the devil, we can come to two conclusions. First is that the devil worked to remove Adam and Eve from the garden because there was this presumption that if they fell, God would be separated from man the same way that the devil is separated from God. That's not true, but it is a valid thought that the devil could have had because it's unlikely that God shared the redemption plan with the devil knowing that the devil would fall because God's all-knowing. Secondly, if the devil could cause Adam and Eve to fall, it would be like driving a knife into God's heart because when you hurt the children of a parent, you hurt the parent. The same is true in today's world. The easiest way to get somebody mad at you or to hurt somebody is to hurt or damage a child, and they will come after you with all they got. and they will be greatly offended and greatly hurt. And so the devil seeks to hurt God by taking out as many of mankind and as many of the Christians as he can, and drag them to hell, to where they'll be eternally separated from God. Now, a little speculation here is that it's quite likely that the devil believed he had won when man was evicted from the garden. They put the flaming sword in front of it. They could never return. Now, God was in the garden and walked with them. So if they were excluded from the garden, then they didn't have that access to God. Additionally, that curse of toiling the soul, the soil, not the soul, and having to work the ground just to eat, and the childbearing, and all the curse that was laid upon them would give that. And then furthermore, when you start to see the events that play out in Genesis, the killing that was between Cain and Abel, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the breeding between the giants and the angels of mankind, and all of the depravity that came upon the earth, you would think at first glance that the devil had won. And it's quite likely that he believed this, especially when God had to wipe out the earth with the flood and start things over. Now, with the death and the resurrection of Christ, however, that perception was blown away. It was cleared away. There was no delusions that um, man would be forever separated from God. God created a clear and definitive path for man to be reunited with God. So now it's down to a concept of bringing as many people down with him as possible, rats on the sinking ship. As God said, there would be forever animosity between the serpent and the man. So, what is the point of this? This point was not to glorify the devil whatsoever. This was not to sympathize with the devil whatsoever. This was to give us some points in the story to where we can implement them in today. So, the first thing to notice is that the devil is not a god. He doesn't have supreme authority. He's subject to punishment from God's will. He is not an all-knowing and all-present being, and therefore should be considered someone who cannot orchestrate your destiny or fate. You have free will. You can construct your own. Yes, God has a plan for all of us, but he gives us free will. 2, the devil is a soul entity. I believe this is very important because when we realize that the devil is cunning, but that we face his pawns and not the devil one-on-one, it makes it easier because we realize these are weaker creatures and that the battle is ours. The third is that for most instances, the devil doesn't have a personal interest in us. His goal is to steal, kill, and destroy, and to bring the most pain and misery to God. Uh, that if he can make us miserable, that's kind of like a side bonus for him. Only the people that can cause the most catastrophic damage to the kingdom of God and to the people are personally given notice from the devil. Everything else is the principalities. Now, the fourth point is we can see how the striving for power and dominion plays out. When it is against God's will, it always plays out badly. We can see this in the Bible over and over and over. And then they turned away from God, and then they died. And then they turned away from God, and then they died. And then they turned away from God, and then they died. And the same is true for today. When people turn away from God, bad things happen. That's why the country's in the state it is. That's why the world is in the state that it is in. That's why people are in the state that they are in. We tend to take leadership and put it into this global and out of reach position where if you have a family, you are the leader of the home. If the home is not doing good, it may be that it's outside of God's will. So those are the points that we can take from this story. We need to really focus on looking at the Bible and trying to figure out what God has